For today's episode of Constructech TV, we're going to focus on rebuilding our infrastructure. Now, President Trump has a new initiative that will use $200 billion in federal funds to spur $1.5 trillion in infrastructure investments. One of his key focuses is on rural America. Now, I could chat about the need to remove regulatory barriers, or I could streamline permitting for projects, or we could spend an entire episode talking about the need to strengthen America's workforce. Now, all of these are very important topics of conversation that truly need to be discussed. But today, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach, something many of you probably, I don't think, have thought about. What if we invested that $1.5 trillion to rebuild roads and bridges, while at the same time we significantly reduce distracted driving? Now, think about this for a second. That means saving 35,000 lives a year. It's an epidemic from driver distraction. Now, I want you to think about this just for a minute. Did you know that the way we interact with technology in our cars is changing every day? We need to consider how this highly mobile, connected to society that we live in is going to impact the way we build it, and it all starts with construction. It's a novel concept that we're going to focus on this episode. Now, I want you to also think about urban planning can, in fact, force people to put down all of their devices, all of the devices that you and I use in our cars. Now, this is a very topic I'm truly passionate about. And on the Peggy Smedley show and on Connected World, I've been talking all about the tragic nature of distracted driving for years. We just can't seem to get most of us to put down our devices when we're behind the wheel. And this means people are dying every single day. Now, let's take a look at some of the data. And here's a very staggering statistic for you. 53% of drivers believe that if manufacturers put infotainment dashboards and hands-free technology in vehicles, then they must be safe. The majority of people believe this, but make no mistake, multitasking behind the wheel is not safe, and this is leading to unbelievable deaths, thousands of deaths, in fact. In 2016, distracted drivers killed 3,450 people in America. That is just too many. However, there's some good news in all of this. That number is finally starting to go down. But believe me, there's still more that needs to be done. So what can we do? As builders and contractors and engineers, that means we can redesign the roads. Smarter urban planning can help curb distracted driving. And as most of us know, this is already starting to take place today. Roundabouts and landscaping are actually proving to do a lot in reducing accidents. It's forcing drivers to focus on the task at hand. And you know what that is? Eyes on the road and hands on the wheel. And putting down those electronic devices and even stop talking all the time. According to researchers at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, roundabouts have been linked to a remarkable 38%, now believe this, a 38% decrease in fatalities and injuries. And that is truly incredible. Now, I do want to caution listeners, roundabouts and viewers, roundabouts do sometimes come at a cost. Single vehicle collisions may increase according to research, so there is a lot to consider. Perhaps we do need to do more driver training about roundabouts here. But if there is a way to get drivers to slow down and put their phones down, we do need to consider it. And it starts with how do we build our infrastructure? How do we win the war against distracted driving? I say if we can't beat them, then join them. We're going to have to force motorists to put down their phones, any electronic device. And that is exactly where that $1.5 trillion to rebuild our infrastructure should go. We have to rebuild these roads anyways because our infrastructure is crumbling. So why not take into consideration all this emerging technology and build those roads that are safe for all of us drivers? And on this show today, we will talk about all of this driving topic. Our guests from city officials to university professors who are going to chime in on this conversation. But for now, that's my picture for stopping distracted driving and building our infrastructure. Did you know there is a connection between city planning and distracted driving? Now, actually, the way roads are designed can significantly reduce the amount of accidents. Now, think about this. Roundabouts can actually move traffic around and slow it down. And this helps drivers pay attention to the task at hand, which is driving. Also, landscaping can force drivers to pay attention and slow down. Here to chat with me about it is Phil Renaud, the Executive Director of the Risk Institute. So Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Peggy. Look, I'm happy to be back with you.
So Phil, let's talk a little bit about how the Risk Institute kind of uncovered a little bit of distracted driving and city planning. How did that all come together?
Yeah, when we first started thinking about distracted driving as a topic that we wanted to address, we looked at, three areas primarily: legislative, behavior, and technology. And then as we were working with our initial planning group, we said, that's great, but everybody's doing kind of legislative behavior, a little bit of technology. And we said, listen, we need to go further in this. And the obvious choice from our members and sponsors was, let's start thinking about urban planning. So the environment that we live in every day and how that can impact distracted driving. So urban planning seems like a natural today, but in the early planning, that wasn't so obvious.
Did you really think when you first started in this research that you were going to really have an effect on distracted driving? Because I've done so much work in distracted driving, I wouldn't imagine that was going to be in your original research, that was going to come out.
Yeah, well, it wasn't in the original research because the original research was heavily focused on legislative behavior changes and use of technology. But the more we looked around us, we realized that, our urban environment, how we exist, the roads that we operate on, have a big part of all of this. Because if road design is poor and how the road planners are thinking about roads for the future, if they're not thinking about how we interact with our vehicles and our transportation, then we're making a huge mistake.
So essentially, are we saying some roads, basically how they're designed, if we personally are distracted when we're looking at our phones or our mobile devices, if the roads aren't really designed well, that's going to inherently add to distracted driving is what we're looking at?
Absolutely. Because, how are we building these roads, how we're designing these roads, how we're incorporating plantings, which are beautiful for us to look at, but there's a reason why some of those things are being incorporated in road designs these days, is to create less distraction and more focus on how we operate our vehicles.
So are we going to look now to the future to really redesign roads? I mean, we have to. Okay, so we see a lot more roundabouts. We see a lot more different road construction now, and we have to really start looking at this to really change. And if we're not going to put down our devices, then we have to say we have to reconstruct and redesign the way our roads are going to be.
That's right. Well, hopefully we're putting our devices down.
But that's not happening. That's not happening.
That's not happening. You're exactly right, Peggy. It's a behavioral kind of challenge for all of us, where these devices are extensions of ourselves. So we've got to think beyond that. We've got to think about how we're dealing with roads in terms of, are they straight? Are they narrow? Are they curved? Do they incorporate traffic signals, stop signs, or are we going to incorporate more of roundabouts, for example, in that road design that keep traffic moving, keep people more focused on their intersection? And frankly, if you think about coming to an intersection with a stop sign or a traffic light, what does that create? That creates a natural opportunity for us to pick up the phone and text or do something distracted. But if I've got an intersection that is a roundabout or some other device that's incorporated into it, then I'm frankly paying more attention to that intersection because I have to navigate that roundabout, I have to deal with the curvature, and I'm not hopefully going to pick up that phone.
Well, it really sounds like we have a great opportunity to really change mindsets, change driving habits by doing road construction. We know we have really terrible roads right now. The roads need to be redone. We need to fix our roads, our bridges. If we can't get people to put down their devices, the next best thing is to really look at our roads. And you've just described a really great thing that your research has really revealed.
It is. And hopefully, as infrastructure money is being considered, that city planners, town planners, urban planning specialists are thinking about this as well as, you know, the next look and feel of the road, but how can we change the road to be more encompassing in terms of how we're interacting with our vehicles and our mobile technology, et cetera.
You've probably just hit on probably the best advice I've heard to end distracted driving of all the things that we've talked about. We've got 50,000 people getting in accidents all the time, in trouble that we see. The numbers keep going up, and yet we can't figure it out. But now, if we can't beat them, you know, in this way, change the roads. And that's what you're talking about. And it's a way to get people focused on the roads. And we're changing traffic lights, and we're doing all this, and we have the technology. This is the way to do it.
It's the way to do it. And hopefully, as we free up funds, and more funds are going into roads and road design and infrastructure changes, that people are also going to take the time to think forward and do the right thing in terms of how we're constructing and designing.
Phil, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Peggy.
All right, well, that is Phil Renaud. He is with the Risk Institute, and that's our Safety Zone for today. The City of New Albany has taken a very unique approach to city planning with the intent of creating a calming traffic impact on roadways. I'm so excited to look at this city's approach to planning. Today, I'm joined by Adrienne Joly, the Director of Administrative Services for the City of New Albany. She helps bring planning to the forefront, and she is spearheading the development of a new Central Park. Adrienne, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So let's talk about what's going on in New Albany, and a little bit, I understand that you guys have some unique characteristics. Tell me a little bit about that.
New Albany is a small aspirational community just outside Ohio's capital of Columbus. We've been growing for about the past 20 years, but we've been growing with the emphasis on building community, not just about physically growing the city. We are a master plan community, and so our master plan encompasses a lot of different areas. That includes land use, amenities such as parks and leisure trails and bike lanes, but also a big component of our master plan is transportation.
So talk a little bit about how that master plan that you've been doing kind of impact the community and how it actually benefits, I think, residents overall, because I think that's pretty important.
Well, the master plan is a blueprint for growth, and it helps set expectations, not just for residents that are living in New Albany, but also for developers or people that seek to come into the community. We have very high standards in terms of design and quality of development, and the master plan sets that expectation for people, provides some consistency in applying those standards. So property owners and new businesses and builders coming into the community know that they're going to be they're going to be required to build to a certain set of standards, but also people coming into the community, their neighbor will be required to have those same type of standards. It also is a way to help us be aspirational. And so when we do a master planning process with the community, we go out, we talk to residents about what they want for the future of New Albany, and it helps us to set a vision.
So is this combining like public and private partnerships a little bit? Is this what we're talking about in that master plan that you're talking about?
It is. Public-private partnerships are really important to New Albany. We've had success with them over the years. If we didn't master plan, we wouldn't be as prepared to enter into these partnerships when the opportunities arise. For example, we have the local utility company here, AEP, or American Electric Power. They built a facility in New Albany 8 to 10 years ago, and we saw an opportunity because we were looking in our economic development plan to create a fiber network. We were able to partner with AEP when they came into the community and build the New Albany Net fiber network. So because we plan, we're able to take advantage of those opportunities when they make themselves apparent.
Now, looking at that with the utility, that's pretty significant. That's not a small project. We're talking about something that's significant, and it takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of partnerships, as you just described, but I think it takes a lot of investment and time and commitment from everybody involved, construction, the community. You just talked about the utility involved and what you have to do to make something like that work, correct?
Yeah, I think it's about building strong relationships with our community. And so that's residents, of course. It also is a community foundation that we have. We also building relationships with our development partners. And so whether it's AEP or another development or developer, they know that we're open to those opportunities and we want to make their project successful, and they're able to partner with us to do so.
So let's talk about, I understand you have leisure trails. Talk a little bit about those. I think those are kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, I think originally our leisure trail system started as a recreational amenity for the community. But lately in the past 10 years, we've changed that or changed our attitude about that a little bit and really see our leisure trail system as a transportation network. And so if we have a goal that we want to connect all our neighborhoods and our businesses and our business park into the village center. So we call our downtown the village center. It's the place where we have village hall, we have the post office, the library, the ice cream shop, everything that you might need to build a community in this is in this one place, and it's very intentional. We know if we expand our leisure trail system, we're offering people another way to get to the village center other than just getting in their cars. And so it provides recreation, it provides exercise for people, but it's an alternative transportation system as well.
So how did you come about developing that, and what was entailed when you guys did that?
So it's been incremental over time. We're up to 36 miles of leisure trail right now, which is pretty big for a community of about 10,000 residents. And we have about 15,000 employees in our business park. We get leisure trails two ways. So we have a master plan for our leisure trail network. So when development is proposed in a certain area, there is a requirement that that development will provide sidewalks and or leisure trails, depending on what that master plan says. And then also the city, when we do our own road projects or leisure trail projects, we're looking at that master plan to make sure that we're not just building a road, but we're building a complete street. So that could include street trees, sidewalks, and or leisure trails.
So I understand that you guys have a roundabout first policy. So we've been talking about roundabouts all day today, and I'm pretty excited about that because I understand roundabouts can kind of help with distracted driving, and that's really a big deal. So tell me a little bit about that.
Our roundabout first policy really came out of our last strategic plan update in 2014. Our corridors leading into and through New Albany, our road corridors, have always been very important to us. The character of those streets is important to the look and the feel and the aesthetic that we want to achieve in New Albany. And so we've always been looking for ways to make sure that our corridors can remain small, so fewer lanes. We don't want to widen our streets just to accommodate traffic. We'd rather build more narrower streets than fewer large streets. And so roundabouts, after we studied it during our strategic plan update, are a way that we can keep our streets narrow, but also accommodate existing and future traffic. And that's because mainly you don't have to build wide intersections to accommodate turn lanes. And so you can keep your roads narrow, but still accommodate the traffic to make sure that congestion isn't too bad in your city.
Adrienne Joly, the Director of Administrative Services for the City of New Albany, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
All right, there you have it. That's someone you should know. How can we encourage change with distracted driving? Now, that's something we really want to do, right? And that means design the roads differently. New research is showing that how a city is actually planned can help change behavior behind the wheel. Here to tell me all about it is Zhenhua Chen, Assistant Professor in City and Regional Planning at Ohio State University. Zhenhua, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Peggy.
So let's talk about the research. I know that there's a lot been done about distracted driving. What did you actually find out?
Yes. Actually, as Philip mentioned earlier, we're very excited because we just launched this research and started trying to investigate the built environment and the distracted driving, looking into the severities and the frequencies, of these kind of crashes using Ohio as an examples. And we believe, there has been a lot of interactions between, distracted driving and, built environment and natural environment as well. However, right now there has been very limited study on that. So we're using some empirical data based on the crash data from the Ohio Department of Transportation and trying to look into that issues.
When you look at distracted driving and roads right now, did you really think you were going to discover that roads are actually contributing or could reduce distracted driving? Did you anticipate that?
Very excellent questions. In fact, when we talk about the built environment, it's not just about the road itself. It's also about its other types of features, such as some of the billboards, such as single designs, and so on and so forth. In fact, we have conducted some preliminary literature review. What we find is that actually, as you probably know, that the billboards actually has highly correlated with the crash rate. In other words, with the more billboards, as you can see, people get more distracted. That's just an example, shows how our roads design, our environment, built environment, actually affected the driving behavior.
But let's talk about that. When you're talking about existing cities versus newer cities, you have urban environments. How do you combat that when you look at what is already being built versus what's going to be built? Those are it's a bit of a challenge, correct?
Yes, that's definitely true. So I think, there has been different things we have to do as a city planners. First, we needed to think about how to improve our existing infrastructure system. In other words, are there any things that we can improve to make our roads be even safer? For example, study also has been finding out, if you look into the tunnels, the lighted colored, ward designs becomes much more efficient in terms of helping people be more focused forward rather than bright illuminations. Again, so that's just an example, shows how we can make changes to the existing infrastructure system. But if we look into the futures, apparently we needed to think about what kind of strategies, what kind of planning, activities may help to make our roads be even safer. So that's why we need this kind of research. Unfortunately, we find that the existing knowledge on this field is very, very limited. That's why we're very passionate about that kind of research.
We talk about smart cities now. That's like the big buzzword. How does this this research apply to what is considered smart cities, or does it?
Yeah, that's another excellent question. In fact, here in Columbus, everybody talks about the smart city. So in my personal humble opinions, smart city not just simply means autonomous vehicle. It means how we can really integrate with the data, with the sensing, with all kinds of information. And based on that information, to use the information to guide the planning, guide to the operation and management. So from that perspective, there has been a lot of things can be done to improve the the roads and to reduce the distracted driving. For example, here at Ohio State University, we have really interdisciplinary teams. Although it hasn't been started yet, but we envision in this forthcoming years, we're trying to work together based on computer science and also data analytics. So we are able to hopefully collect some of the data, so sensing of the people's driving behavior, and then trying to analyze how we can use that information to guide for planning. So that way we can really achieve our a smart kind of operations.
Well, we've talked about roundabouts actually helping with reducing maybe some distracted driving.
Yes.
But what about other types of designs and roads that might help some other knucklehead who decides to use his mobile device while he's driving? Because we know we are not getting younger generations or people to put down their mobile devices. So what other layouts in city planning are there to help us think about that to make the roads a little safer?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So as Philip mentioned, in fact, there has been many things that we have to consider. Roundabout is one of the, probably applications now many city planners at Ohio are trying to implement it. There's also the curvatures of the road. For example, by adding more curvatures to the road design, there's ways to reduce the speed as well. So apparently, right now, there hasn't been a consistent understanding in that. That's why we are trying to doing this kind of studies by factoring different types of road considerations, their features, such as their pavement, their intersection types, and their contours, and so on and so forth. The goal is really to identify what types of road designs and will affect the driving behavior, the crashes, and how we can really improve that. So that's what we hope we could get some concrete research out through this project.
I guess I have one. I know we're running out of time, but realistically, how do you think we're going to get city planners to really get other cities to understand we have to do something? We talk about there's a lot of money, $1 trillion the president wants to put forth. Are we going to make other city planners and governments understand now's the time to do this and we have to because it's the right thing to do?
Yes. Peggy, another excellent question. I'm totally with you. So in my, again, humble opinions, what I find is a lot of times people are not really aware of this from, a research perspective, from the, data perspective. People just didn't know there's a linkages there. There's a way we can improve that. So I think, what we could do is really through a kind of interdisciplinary approach, like what Risk Institute right now has been doing. We're trying to work with the legislation. We're trying to work with the people who are doing, behavior science. We're also working with people who are, dealing with the technologies. That way we are, be able to work collaboratively and, get some results out. And hopefully, we can really help to educate the public, educate our decision makers so that we are able to move in the same directions and in a more efficient matters on this issue.
Well, I thank you so much, Zhenhua Chen, for being with us today.
Thank you, Peggy. It was a pleasure.
Well, we really enjoyed it. You are the assistant professor in city and regional planning at Ohio State University. Thank you so much. And that's our Learn It for today. What do you think of when you hear the words distracted driving? Often, it drums up an image of someone texting or talking on their cell phones. But there are actually several different types of distracted driving. I'm going to walk you through the basics right now. And then I'm going to actually talk about the impact specifically on the construction industry. There are 3 different types of distracted driving. The first is cognitive distraction. This is when a driver's mind isn't focused on the task of driving. This can include talking to another passenger or simply being preoccupied with a family or a work issue. Even listening to a podcast can take a driver's focus away from the task of driving. Now, the second is visual distraction. This occurs when a driver looks at anything other than the road at hand. An example is a driver who turns around to check at the baby in the back seat, or someone who looks at a device or to seek out directions, or maybe even to send a text. The final is a manual distraction. This is when the driver takes one hand or both hands off the wheel, and this can include eating, adjusting your GPS, or getting something out of your wallet. Texting and driving is very dangerous because it all involves three forms of distraction. How does it impact our construction industry? Each year, more than 20,000 of our workers are injured in road construction work zones. We're talking 20,000. Fatalities at road construction sites typically account for between 1.5% to 3% of all workplace fatalities. Now, we understand it's not always just driver distraction. It requires a lot of different things, but it's a dangerous place to work, and you all know that. And distracted drivers are making it even more perilous. But it doesn't have to be if we have better practices on the job and to the job. The goal is to get all of you home safe and sound to your families. Distracted driving, that's your word of the day. So make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching Constructech TV, where we're talking tech at the job site.